Before we jump into the chaos, don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss the next adventure. The Krell warship materialized in Earth's orbital space like a wound torn into reality itself. Its hull gleamed with bioorganic armor that pulsed with sickly light, and its weapons arrays tracked every human satellite within range. Inside the diplomatic station floating between Earth and Luna, Ambassador Kathy watched the alien vessels approach with the mild interest of someone who had seen worse things before breakfast. Neo stepped through the airlock with the kind of swagger that suggested he'd never lost a fight and didn't plan to start now. He was massive, easily twice the height of any human, covered in chitinous plates that shifted colors from deep crimson to violent purple. Behind him came three other Krell, each wearing ceremonial armor that looked like it had been forged from the screams of defeated enemies. The lead warrior's eyes fixed on Kathy with predatory focus. "I am Neo of the Krell Dominion," he announced, his voice resonating through translation implants that make every word sound like a death sentence. "I bring a challenge from the Galactic Tribunal. Your world has been selected to provide a champion for the trial of supremacy. One warrior, one battle. The fate of your species hangs in the balance." Kathy set down her tablet and looked up at the towering alien with an expression of polite curiosity. She was a small woman by human standards, barely reaching Neo's waist, wearing a simple grey suit that suggested she had better things to do than impress visiting aliens. Her hair was pulled back in a practical bun, and her eyes held the particular weariness of someone who had spent too many years dealing with bureaucratic nonsense. "One warrior," she repeated, as if testing the words. "Could you be more specific about what that means?" Neo's chest plates flared with indignation. Behind him, Lux, the delegation's senior counselor, stepped forward. His features were more refined than Neo's, suggesting centuries of selective breeding for political cunning rather than combat prowess. When he spoke, his words dripped with condescension. "Surely even primitive species understand the concept of singular. One individual. A single representative of your martial capability. Not two. Not many. One." Kathy nodded slowly, pulling up a document on her tablet and scrolling through it with casual indifference. "And this trial of supremacy, what exactly does it entail?" Zara, the Krell scientist, moved forward. She was leaner than the others, her bioarmor adapted for intellectual rather than physical combat. Her multiple eyes blinked in sequence as she activated a holographic display that showed scenes of previous trials. Alien champions clashing in brutal single combat, entire species watching as their fate was decided by one warrior's skill. "The trial has existed for millennia," Zara explained, her voice carrying the smugness of someone explaining basic mathematics to a child. "When species are deemed worthy of joining galactic civilization, the tribunal selects their strongest warrior. That warrior faces our champion in honorable combat. Victory grants your species membership in the council. Defeat means isolation for your next 100 generations." "And if we refuse?" Kathy asked. Neo laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Refusal is considered automatic defeat. Your world will be quarantined. No trade, no technology exchange, no communication with the wider galaxy. Your species will wither in isolation, while the rest of civilization advances without you." Kathy appeared to consider this for a moment, her fingers tapping against her tablet in a rhythm that suggested complex calculations happening behind calm eyes. "So just to clarify, you want us to send one warrior, our strongest, to fight your champion in single combat?" "Finally, the primitive understands," Lux said with visible relief. "Yes, one warrior. You have until the end of this solar cycle to present your champion. We will wait at the designated neutral zone for your response." "I see," Kathy said. Then she smiled, and something about that smile made Sevin, the Krell diplomat, take an involuntary step backward. "Give me a moment. I need to make a call." She tapped her comm badge, a simple gesture that nonetheless made every Krell in the room tense. "This is Ambassador Kathy. Connect me with Naval Command. Priority Alpha." Neo's translator struggled with the unfamiliar term. "Naval Command? What manner of warrior title is this?" "You'll see," Kathy said, still smiling that unsettling smile. The communication took longer than expected, during which Neo paced the diplomatic suite like a caged predator. He kept glancing at the planet below, at the blue marble hanging in space like a prize waiting to be claimed. His species had conquered dozens of worlds, subjugated hundreds of civilizations. This backwater planet with its primitive technology and laughable military would be another trophy for the Krell Dominion. When the com-time of Visality channel finally connected, the face that appeared on the view screen belonged to Admiral Ashley, a woman whose silver hair and weathered features suggested decades of service. She wore a uniform covered in insignia that meant nothing to the Krell, but spoke volumes to anyone familiar with human military hierarchy. Behind her, the bridge of a warship bustled with controlled activity. "Ambassador," Ashley said, her voice carrying the flat professionalism of career military. "I received your priority code. What's the situation?" "We have visitors from the Galactic Tribunal," Kathy explained. "Apparently Earth needs to send one warrior for something called the Trial of Supremacy, single combat against their champion. I thought you might be interested." Ashley's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered behind her eyes. "One warrior. Did these visitors specify any particular restrictions on what constitutes a warrior?" "They said one individual, one singular representative, and of our martial capability." "Interesting." Ashley glanced at something off-screen, probably a tactical display. "And what happens if we win?" "Membership in their galactic civilization, trade, technology, all the benefits of interstellar cooperation." "And if we lose?" "Isolation for the next 100 generations." Ashley nodded slowly, processing this information with the methodical precision of someone trained to make life or death decisions under pressure. "Ambassador, I have a question for our visitors. Would the United States Navy qualify as one warrior?" The question hung in the air like a live grenade. Neo's translator cycled through the sentence multiple times, trying to parse meaning from words that shouldn't fit together. Lux's faceplates shifted through several colors associated with confusion. Zara's multiple eyes blinked in rapid succession as her scientific mind tried to reconcile the impossible statement. "The Navy," Neo said slowly, "is clearly multiple beings, multiple ships, multiple weapons. This is not one warrior." Kathy turned to face him, and her smile had grown wider. "Actually, the United States Navy is one branch of our military. One organization, one unified command structure, one warrior, by your definition." "That is not what we meant," Lux sputtered, his composure cracking. "The spirit of the law clearly indicates a single biological entity capable of combat." "Did you specify biological entity in your challenge?" Kathy asked, her voice taking on the dangerous edge of a lawyer who'd found a loophole. "Because from where I'm sitting, you said one warrior. The Navy is one warrior. One very large, very well-equipped warrior, but one nonetheless." Seven pulled out a datapad, frantically scrolling through the official challenge documentation. His face went through several color shifts as he realized the horrible truth. "The wording is ambiguous," he whispered. "The ancient texts never specified individual biological requirements, because no species in recorded history ever tried to claim an entire military branch as a single warrior. There's a first time for everything," Ashley said from the view screen. Her expression remained neutral, but her eyes held the predatory gleam of someone who just realized she held all the cards. "So do the Krell accept the United States Navy as Earth's champion, or do we need to clarify the terms of engagement?" Neo looked like he wanted to punch something, preferably Kathy's smug face. His bioarmor flared with aggressive displays of color, his chest plates expanding to make him appear even larger and more threatening. "This is deception. This is cowardice. This violates every principle of honorable combat that civilized species hold sacred." "This is linguistics," Kathy corrected. "You issued a challenge with specific wording. We're accepting that challenge using your exact terminology. If you have a problem with our interpretation, feel free to withdraw your challenge and revise your terms. We'll wait." The Krell delegation huddled together, their voices rising in what sounded like a heated argument. Zara was gesturing frantically at her datapad, showing calculations and fleet assessments. Lux's face had gone pale, his ceremonial robes rustling with agitation. Seven looked like he wanted to be anywhere else in the galaxy. Only Neo remained defiant, his massive frame radiating barely contained rage. "We will not withdraw," Neo declared, breaking away from the group. "The Krell Dominion has never retreated from a challenge. If Earth wishes to send its entire military branch, then so be it. We will demonstrate why the Krell are the premier warriors of this galaxy. We will crush your navy, humiliate your species, and remind the lesser civilizations why the Dominion's word is law." "Wonderful," Kathy said, making a note on her tablet. "Admiral, how long do you need to get into position?" Ashley consulted her tactical display again. "We have a carrier to strike group currently running exercises near Mars. I can have them at the designated neutral zone within the hour. If you want the full force package, I'll need until tomorrow morning." "Let's start with the strike group," Kathy decided. "I think that will make our point effectively." Acknowledged. "Strike Group Alpha is moving to intercept coordinates now. Ambassador, would you like me to maintain the comm link so our guests can watch the deployment?" "That would be delightful." The view screen split, one half showing Admiral Ashley's bridge, the other displaying tactical information that made Zara's multiple eyes widen in horror. The scientist stared at the display, her datapad slipping from nerveless fingers. Numbers and vessel classifications scrolled across the screen in a cascade of information that painted a very specific picture. "That's impossible," Zara whispered. "Those mass readings, those power signatures, the number of craft, the weapons loadout, this cannot be accurate." "Oh, that's just one carrier strike group," Kathy said helpfully. "We have 11 of those. The full navy is considerably larger." Neo's translator began emitting distressed sounds as it tried to process Zara's increasingly frantic calculations. The scientist was muttering numbers under her breath, her appendages trembling as she ran simulation after simulation on her datapad. Each calculation seemed to make her more agitated. "Lux," Zara said, her voice breaking, "we need to reconsider this challenge. Immediately." "Explain," the counselor demanded. Zara turned her datapad so everyone could see. The display showed comparative analysis between a standard Krell battle fleet and the human carrier strike group currently moving into position. The numbers were not favorable for the Krell. "The human carrier alone displaces more mass than our entire delegation's warships combined," Zara explained, her scientific detachment crumbling into barely controlled panic. "Its fighter complement numbers in the dozens. Its missile capacity exceeds our point defense capabilities by orders of magnitude, and according to their public database, this is considered a standard deployment package, not even their most powerful formation." Lux's face had gone completely pale. "How many personnel operate this strike group?" "Approximately 7,000 humans," Zara said. "And that's just one of 11 similar formations. The total personnel count for their navy exceeds 300,000 individuals." The silence that followed was profound. Neo stared at the tactical display like it had personally betrayed him. Seven was making small whimpering sounds that his translator couldn't properly render. Lux appeared to be praying to Krell deities that probably couldn't help him at this point. "But we only asked for one warrior," Neo said weakly. "And you got one," Kathy replied. "One navy. Would you like to meet him? Or her? The ships don't really have genders, but humans tend to call them she out of tradition." On the view screen, Admiral Ashley cleared her throat. "Ambassador, Strike Group Alpha reports weapons lock on the Krell delegation vessel. Shall I have them stand down? Or would our guests like a demonstration of capability? Let's not destroy anyone's ship just yet," Kathy said, "though I think a flyby might be educational." Acknowledged. Ordering visual approach now. Through the station's observation ports, the Krell could see what happened next. The carrier strike group emerged from behind Luna's far side, each vessel's hull reflecting sunlight like polished steel. The carrier itself was a floating city, its deck covered with aircraft that gleamed with lethal purpose. Destroyers flanked it in precise formation, their weapons arrays tracking the Krell vessel with mechanical precision. Cruisers held the outer perimeter, their missile tubes loaded and ready. Submarines, invisible beneath the formation's surface, made their presence known, only through active sonar pings that rattled the Krell ship's hull. Neo watched his species' mighty warship, the vessel that had conquered worlds and shattered civilizations, dwarfed by a formation of human ships that Admiral Ashley had described as routine. His translator picked up chatter from the carrier's flight deck. Pilots casually discussing launch procedures in the flat tones of professionals doing their jobs. There was no boasting, no theatrics, just efficient communication between warriors who knew their craft. "This is still only one part of your navy," Lux said, his voice hollow. "You said you have 11 such formations, plus submarines, plus support vessels, plus the Marines if you want to count them separately, plus reserve forces," Kathy confirmed. "Earth takes maritime warfare very seriously. We've been perfecting it for centuries. Would you like to see what else we can do? Or shall we proceed to the trial of supremacy with current terms?" Neo looked at his fellow. Krell saw his own defeat reflected in their faces. He thought about the trials he'd witnessed, the honorable single combat between champions, the glory of victory, and the dignity of defeat. Then he looked at the carrier strike group floating in space like a promise of overwhelming violence, and he understood that Earth had just rewritten the rules of galactic warfare. "We need to consult with the tribunal," Sevin said quietly. "This situation requires clarification of terms before we proceed." "Take all the time you need," Kathy said. "The Navy isn't going anywhere." "Well, actually, Admiral, where is the Navy going?" "Maintaining position in neutral space," Ashley replied. "Standing by for further orders. Though I should mention that Strike Group Bravo is currently finishing exercises near Jupiter. If you need additional presence, I can have them join Alpha's formation." "I think one strike group makes our point sufficiently," Kathy said. "For now." The Krell delegation retreated to their ship, moving with the defeated posture of warriors who'd just discovered their entire combat philosophy was obsolete. Through the observation port, Kathy watched their vessel power up its engines and begin a slow withdrawal toward the outer system. On the view screen, Admiral Ashley's expression remained professionally neutral. "Ambassador, that was well played." "Thank you, Admiral. Think the tribunal will accept our interpretation?" "I think the tribunal is about to have a very long discussion about military doctrine and the importance of precise language in challenge declarations. Either way, Earth just announced itself to the galaxy in a way nobody's going to forget." Kathy smiled, watching the human warships hold formation in the darkness of space, each vessel representing decades of technological advancement, centuries of military tradition, and the collective effort of thousands of humans who'd never stopped improving their ability to project force across impossible distances. The Krell had wanted Earth's strongest warrior. Well, they'd gotten him. All 300,000 of him, organized into one very annoyed navy that was currently demonstrating why challenging humans to single combat required very careful definition of terms. Somewhere in the outer system, Neo was explaining to the Galactic Tribunal why his species might need to update their combat regulations. On Earth, military analysts were already preparing briefings on first contact protocols and interstellar force projection. And in the neutral space between Earth and Mars, a carrier strike group maintained position, waiting to see if anyone else wanted to test humanity's creative interpretation of military terminology. The trial of supremacy was supposed to be simple. One warrior, one battle, one outcome. Humanity had just made it infinitely more complicated. Neo returned to the negotiation table with considerably less swagger than he'd possessed during his initial visit. The Krell warrior's bio-armor had lost its aggressive coloring, settling into muted tones that suggested resignation rather than combat readiness. Behind him, Lux carried himself with the stiff dignity of someone who'd spent the last several hours being screamed at by superiors who wanted answers he couldn't provide. Zara looked like she hadn't slept, her multiple eyes bloodshot from analyzing tactical data that kept telling her the same impossible story. Ambassador Kathy waited in the same diplomatic suite, still wearing that infuriating smile that suggested she knew exactly how the next conversation would unfold. Admiral Ashley remained on the view screen, her presence a constant reminder that Earth's military capability wasn't just theoretical posturing, but actual steel and firepower floating in orbit. "The tribunal has reviewed your interpretation of our challenge," Lux began, his voice carefully controlled. While we dispute the spirit of your claim, we acknowledge that the letter of our challenge law contains insufficient specificity regarding individual versus organizational definitions of warrior status. So you're accepting the Navy as Earth's champion, Kathy translated. We are requesting a demonstration of capability before finalizing combat terms, Lux countered. The tribunal wishes to understand what your so-called warrior can actually accomplish beyond merely existing in large numbers. Neo stepped forward, some of his pride returning now that the conversation had shifted toward actual combat. The Krell do not fear numbers. We have faced fleets before and emerged victorious. If your navy wishes to prove itself worthy of champion status, let it demonstrate strength beyond simple mass. Admiral Ashley's expression didn't change, but something predatory flickered behind her eyes. Ambassador, shall I schedule a training exercise for our guests? That seems reasonable, Kathy agreed. Nothing too dramatic, Admiral. We want to educate, not terrify. Understood. I'll keep it minimal. Ashley turned to address someone off-screen. Weapons, prepare a standard demonstration package. Target the coordinates where the Krell vessel was initially positioned. Make sure our guests have relocated to a safe observation distance first. Zara's datapad beeped urgently. She glanced at it, her face going pale. Admiral, your vessel is powering weapons systems. Multiple launch tubes are opening. Your targeting arrays are achieving lock on empty space. Correct, Ashley confirmed. We're about to demonstrate what happens when the Navy engages a static target. I recommend your ship moves at least 50 kilometers from your previous position. The blast radius will be considerable. The Krell vessel scrambled to relocate, its engines flaring with sudden urgency. Neo watched the human warships with growing unease as hatches opened along the destroyer's flanks, revealing launch tubes that glowed with pre-fire energy signatures. The carrier's flight deck had cleared, its aircraft pulled back into protective hangars. The cruisers adjusted their position slightly, creating perfect firing angles on the designated target zone. Ambassador, all vessels report ready, Ashley announced. Krell delegation has reached minimum safe distance. Commencing demonstration in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Fire. The universe lit up. Cruise missiles erupted from the destroyer's tubes in perfect synchronization, their engines igniting in brilliant flares that painted trails across the darkness. Each weapon followed its own trajectory, yet all converged on the same point in space where the Krell vessel had been floating moments before. The missiles moved with terrifying grace, their targeting systems making minute corrections as gravitational forces attempted to pull them off course. Impact came as a cascade of light and fury. Each warhead detonated in precise sequence, the explosions overlapping to create a sustained sphere of destruction that would have vaporized anything caught within its radius. The electromagnetic pulse washed over the Krell ship's shields, causing their defensive systems to flicker and strain. Debris that didn't exist before the strike now tumbled through space, pieces of superheated metal that had been conjured from pure energy release. Zara stared at her instruments with the expression of someone watching her understanding of physics break down in real time. That was 40 missiles, she whispered. 40 separate weapons systems, each carrying enough destructive force to level a city block. And your admiral called this minimal demonstration. We have larger ordnance available, Ashley said calmly. Would you like to see the railgun batteries? Or perhaps a full fighter squadron strike? We can coordinate a multi-vector assault if that would be more impressive. That won't be necessary, Lux said quickly, his voice cracking slightly. We have seen sufficient demonstration of your capability. Neo, however, wasn't ready to concede. His warrior pride demanded some gesture of defiance, some acknowledgement that the Krell remained formidable despite this overwhelming display of human firepower. Your weapons are impressive, he admitted grudgingly. But the Navy is still just ships and missiles. Where is the warrior spirit? Where is the honor in attacking from such distance? Admiral Ashley leaned forward slightly, and her voice took on an edge that made even Kathy raise an eyebrow. Warrior spirit doesn't stop kinetic impactors. Honor doesn't deflect guided munitions. The Navy exists to project force across impossible distances and eliminate threats before those threats can harm American interests. If you want to discuss honor, we can arrange closer engagement. I have Marines who would be delighted to demonstrate small unit tactics in boarding actions. What are Marines? Seven asked nervously. Think of the Navy, but angrier and better at breaking things up close, Kathy explained. The Krell delegation exchanged glances that communicated volumes of unspoken dread. Zara returned to her datapad, pulling up information about human military branches that made her multiple eyes widen with each new discovery. She made a small choking sound when she reached the section about Marine Corps history and combat doctrine. You have multiple branches, she said faintly. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, each with distinct capabilities and combat specializations. Each with hundreds of thousands of personnel, each with technology and training comparable to what we've just witnessed. Space Force too, Kathy added helpfully, though that's relatively new, still figuring out their exact role in interstellar warfare. Lux looked like he wanted to collapse. Neo's aggressive posture had completely evaporated, replaced by the hollow-eyed stare of a warrior who'd just realized his entire civilization was operating several generations behind the curve. Seven was muttering, prayers to Krell gods who probably weren't listening. The tribunal will need to reconsider combat terms, Lux finally said. This demonstration has provided valuable data regarding Earth's military capacity. We must consult with our leadership before proceeding with the trial of supremacy. Take your time, Ashley said. The Navy isn't going anywhere. Well, Strike Group Bravo will rotate back to Jupiter for resupply, but Alpha will maintain position here. Standard peacetime deployment. The word peacetime hung in the air like a threat. If this was what humanity considered routine training, what did their actual warfare look like? None of the Krell wanted to find out. Neo's pride proved stronger than his common sense. After cycles of deliberation with the tribunal, the Krell warrior returned to Earth's diplomatic station with a proposal that made even Lux visibly uncomfortable. The delegation assembled in the observation suite, Neo standing at the center with his bioarmor, polished to ceremonial brightness, his bearings suggesting he'd found some loophole that would restore Krell honor. The tribunal has reviewed all available data, Neo announced, his voice carrying forced confidence. We acknowledge that your Navy qualifies as a valid champion under the broadest interpretation of challenge law. However, we invoke the ancient right of personal combat. I, Neo of the Krell Dominion, challenge one human representative to face me in single combat. No ships. No missiles. Warrior against warrior, as the gods intended. Ambassador Kathy glanced at Admiral Ashley on the view screen. The Admiral's expression suggested she'd been expecting this exact scenario. Ambassador, I have a volunteer if you're accepting this challenge. Who did you have in mind? Lieutenant Commander Bell. Fighter pilot, decorated combat veteran, extremely motivated individual who's been asking if she can participate since this whole situation started. Kathy considered this briefly. Will she follow engagement protocols? She'll follow orders, Ashley said, which wasn't quite the same thing but seemed sufficient. Very well. Tell Bell she's cleared for combat operations. Neo's translator conveyed satisfaction at this response. Finally, proper combat. One Krell warrior against one human. No technological advantages to hide behind, just pure skill and strength deciding the outcome. He moved to the designated combat platform, a neutral zone maintained by the tribunal for exactly this purpose. His bioarmor shifted into combat configuration, weapons systems activating with predatory eagerness. Bell arrived in a shuttle that looked disappointingly small and unarmed. She emerged wearing a standard flight suit, her helmet tucked under one arm, her expression casual to the point of insulting. Neo studied her with growing confusion. She carried no visible weapons, wore no armor beyond her thin flight suit, and appeared remarkably unconcerned about facing a Krell, a warrior in single combat. You come unprepared, Neo observed, his confidence returning. Where is your blade, your armor, your warrior's pride? Bell smiled, and that smile reminded Neo uncomfortably of Ambassador Kathy's expression when she'd first summoned the Navy. I brought everything I need, she said, tapping the comm unit on her collar. Dragon 2, this is Dragon 1. I'm on the platform. Target is designated hostile. Stand by for fire mission. Neo's translator struggled with the military terminology. He glanced around the combat platform. seeing nothing but Bell and empty space. Then his motion sensors detected something above him, and he looked up just in time to see an F-35 drop out of stealth mode 50 meters overhead. The fighter screamed past at combat speed, its presence a violation of everything Neo understood about honor and single combat. He roared protest into his comm, demanding the tribunal intervene, but Bell was already moving. She sidestepped his charge, with practiced ease, clicking her radio with calm precision. Target is hostile and mobile. Cleared hot. The F-35's cannon spoke with a voice that shredded Neo's shields in under a second. 25mm rounds tore through his bioarmor's defensive systems like they were decorative tissue, each impact sending feedback through his neural interface that screamed danger. Neo dove behind a structural support pillar, his confidence evaporating faster than his shield capacity. "This violates combat law," Lux shrieked from the observation suite. "She brought a warship. She brought her equipment," Kathy corrected calmly. "You specified one human warrior. Bell is one human. That's her fighter. You didn't specify equipment restrictions in your challenge terms." Bell walked across the platform like she had all the time in the universe, narrating Neo's position to her wingman with professional detachment. "Target concealed behind northeast support structure. Recommend high explosive. Ordnance for structural compromise." Neo heard the missile lock warning and made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He threw his ceremonial blade onto the platform's deck and broadcast surrender on all frequencies, his voice breaking with humiliation and terror. The missile lock tone cut off immediately, Bell's hand frozen over her targeting control. "Confirm surrender," Bell said, her tone suggesting disappointment. "Dragon 2, abort weapons release. Target has yielded." The F-35 pulled up into a victory roll that seemed unnecessarily theatrical given the circumstances. Neo slumped against the support pillar, his bioarmor scorched and smoking, his pride shattered beyond any hope of repair. Through the observation port, he could see Zara frantically calculating something on her datapad, while Lux argued with tribunal representatives who seemed equally horrified and impressed. "The human wins by surrender," the tribunal's adjudicator announced, his voice carrying across all channels. "Earth's champion has proven superiority through unconventional but technically legal combat methodology." Bell landed her shuttle back on the platform and stepped out, walking over to where Neo sat in defeated silence. She extended her hand in what Neo's cultural database identified as a human gesture of respect between warriors. He stared at that hand for a long moment before accepting it, letting Bell help him to his feet. "You fought well," Bell said, though her tone suggested she was being polite rather than honest. "Your shields held longer than expected against the cannon." "You coordinated with your flying machine," Neo said weakly. "You moved as one unit. Yeah, that's kind of our thing. Humans work better in teams. Individual combat isn't really our specialty anymore." Neo looked at the F-35 sitting on the platform, its weapons pods still loaded, its pilot visible in the cockpit giving Bell a thumbs-up gesture. He thought about the Navy, waiting in orbit, about Admiral Ashley's casual mention of Marines and larger ordnance, about humanity's entire military philosophy built around combined arms and overwhelming force projection. "We didn't fight one warrior," Neo said, the realization hitting him like Bell's fighter had hit his shields. "We fought a species that thinks 300,000 individuals operating in perfect coordination still counts as one unit. 340,000 actually," Bell corrected. "But who's counting?" The Krell delegation returned to their ship in silence, Neo moving with the hollow gait of someone whose entire worldview had been systematically demolished by a human pilot and her very supportive air wing. Behind him, Bell was already debriefing with Admiral Ashley, discussing engagement parameters and suggesting improvements for next time. Earth had won the trial of supremacy not through superior individual strength, but through a fundamentally different understanding of what made a warrior strong. The galaxy was about to learn that lesson whether it wanted to or not. The Galactic Council's ceremonial chamber had existed for millennia, its architecture designed to intimidate newly inducted species with the weight of cosmic civilization. Crystalline columns rose into darkness, each one representing a conquered world or subjugated population that had learned to accept galactic law. The council seats arranged themselves in concentric circles, with the most ancient and powerful species occupying the inner ring. Today, those inner ring delegates shifted uncomfortably as Ambassador Kathy entered the chamber. She walked alone, or at least appeared to. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone present. Behind her, visible through the chamber's transparent dome, a carrier strike group maintained position in perfect formation. Admiral Ashley had positioned her vessels with deliberate precision, close enough to remind everyone of Earth's recent demonstration, but far enough to avoid overt threat. The message was clear, without being crude. Kathy took her assigned seat in the outer ring, the position traditionally reserved for probationary members awaiting full council acceptance. She arranged her tablet with casual efficiency, seeming utterly unbothered by the hundreds of alien eyes studying her every movement. Lux sat across the chamber, his posture rigid with barely contained resentment. Neo stood behind the Krell delegation's seats, his presence ceremonial rather than functional, his bio-armor bearing scorch marks he'd chosen not to repair as some form of penance. The Council's prime arbiter, an ancient being whose species name translated roughly as "those who came first," activated the session with a gesture that made reality ripple. Its voice echoed through translation implants in every delegate's mind, carrying weight that suggested absolute authority. We convene to address Earth's admission to galactic civilization following successful completion of the trial of supremacy. The human representative demonstrated martial capability through unconventional interpretation of combat law. This council must now determine whether such interpretation represents acceptable cultural variance or dangerous precedent. Kathy raised her hand with polite patience. The prime arbiter regarded her with something resembling curiosity, as if a particularly clever insect had just performed an unexpected trick. The human wishes to speak? I'd like to clarify Earth's position before this council makes any determinations about precedent, Kathy said. My species didn't exploit a loophole in your combat law. We simply answered your challenge using terminology that made sense within our cultural framework. You asked for one warrior. We sent one. The fact that our definition of warrior includes organizational structures rather than individual fighters reflects our evolutionary history, not any attempt to deceive. Zara, attending as scientific advisor to the Krell delegation, pulled up holographic data that projected across the chamber. Her multiple eyes still carried the haunted look of someone whose calculations had revealed uncomfortable truths. The human speaks accurately. Our analysis of Earth's military history shows consistent patterns of organizational thinking dating back thousands of their solar cycles. Individual combat gave way to unit tactics, which evolved into combined arms doctrine, which ultimately produced the navy we encountered. This wasn't deception. This is simply how humans think about warfare. That makes it more dangerous, not less, rumbled a delegate from the Vrin Collective, a species known for aggressive territorial expansion. If humans instinctively organize force projection at scales we consider excessive, what happens when their navy encounters standard border disputes? I can answer that, Admiral Ashley said, her voice transmitted directly into the chamber's communication systems. Without waiting for permission, several delegates jumped at the unexpected intrusion. Earth proposes a mutual defense treaty with the Council. Any threat to member species becomes a threat to all members. The Navy will respond to authorized peacekeeping requests according to established rules of engagement. We're not interested in conquest. We're interested in stability. The Vrin delegate's facial appendages twitched with skepticism. And what makes you think the Council wants human military intervention in our affairs? Before Ashley could respond, alarms blared through the chamber's security systems. The Prime Arbiter's holographic displays lit up with urgent tactical data. Two of the Council's member species, the Tola Empire and the Vrin Collective, had apparently decided this would be an excellent moment to resume their long-standing territorial dispute. Both factions had brought warships to the Council session as shows of force, and those warships were now powering weapons systems in what looked like imminent combat. The Council erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted at each other in dozens of languages, translation systems struggling to keep up with overlapping arguments and accusations. The Prime Arbiter attempted to restore order, its authority suddenly looking less absolute when faced with species willing to start shooting inside the Council's neutral space. Security forces mobilized, But everyone present knew those forces existed more for ceremony than actual combat capability. Kathy tapped her comm badge with deliberate calm. "Admiral, I believe we're witnessing a situation that requires peacekeeping intervention." "Already on it," Ashley replied. "Give me 60 seconds." The carrier strike group moved with precision that made the Tola and Vryn warships look clumsy by comparison. Destroyers positioned themselves between the hostile vessels, their targeting systems achieving lock on both parties simultaneously. The carrier's flight deck erupted, with activity, as fighters launched in perfect sequence, creating a defensive screen that would intercept any weapons fire before it reached civilian areas. Cruisers activated electronic warfare systems that flooded both hostile ships with enough sensor noise to effectively blind their targeting computers. Then Admiral Ashley's voice cut through every communication channel in the system, her tone carrying the flat authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "This is Admiral Ashley, commanding United States Navy Strike Group Alpha, to all vessels currently powering weapons systems. You have exactly 10 seconds to stand down, or I will interpret your actions as hostile intent, requiring defensive response. Decide quickly, because my weapons officer is very efficient." The Tola commander responded with bluster about sovereignty and ancient grievances. The Vryn captain made threatening gestures at his tactical display. Neither of them powered down their weapons systems. Ashley counted down from 10 with metronomic precision. When she reached 0, every Navy vessel locked weapons simultaneously, and the sheer number of targeting indicators that appeared on both hostile ships' sensors created a display that looked like someone had activated a Christmas tree inside a tactical computer. "Still waiting for you to power down," Ashley said pleasantly. "I should mention that we've achieved firing solutions on your engines, weapons arrays, communication systems, and life support infrastructure. We can disable both your vessels without destroying them, though the repair bills will be substantial. Or you can stand down, return to your respective territories, and schedule a proper diplomatic session to resolve your dispute. Recommend the second option." The Tola and Vryn commanders powered down their weapons systems within seconds of each other. Their ships began moving away from the council chamber with the careful movements of people trying not to attract a fast predator's attention. The Navy maintained weapons lock until both vessels had cleared the neutral zone, then smoothly returned to defensive formation as if nothing particularly interesting had occurred. The council chamber had gone completely silent. Every delegate stared at the human warships with expressions ranging from shock to grudging respect to outright terror. The Prime Arbiter's ancient features showed something that might have been approval, or possibly indigestion. With beings that old, it was hard to tell. "The human military demonstrates remarkable discipline and restraint," the Prime Arbiter observed. "Lesser species would have fired first and negotiated later. Your admiral achieved de-escalation through overwhelming force projection combined with clear communication of intent. This is sophisticated peacekeeping methodology. We've had a lot of practice," Kathy said. "Earth's history includes numerous conflicts that taught us the value of clear rules of engagement and proportional response. Sometimes the best way to prevent violence is to make the cost of violence extremely obvious before anyone starts shooting." Lux rose from his seat. His posture suggesting the words he was about to speak caused him physical pain. "The Krell Dominion withdraws its objection to Earth's Council membership. Ambassador Kathy and Admiral Ashley have demonstrated that human military philosophy, while unconventional, serves legitimate peacekeeping purposes. We recommend full Council acceptance with standard member privileges and responsibilities." Other delegates murmured agreement, some more enthusiastically than others. The Vryn representative, freshly reminded of why picking fights near human warships was inadvisable, voted in favor with visible reluctance. The Tola delegate abstained, which under Council rules counted as tacit acceptance. Within minutes, Earth's probationary status had been elevated to full membership, complete with all the benefits and obligations that entailed. "Welcome to galactic civilization," the Prime Arbiter said, and something in its tone suggested genuine satisfaction. "May your species bring the same creativity to peaceful cooperation that you demonstrated in combat doctrine." The ceremony continued with traditional formalities that Kathy endured with diplomatic patience. Treaties were signed, economic agreements finalized. Cultural exchange programs established. Through it all, the Navy maintained its position in orbit, a silent reminder that Earth's admission to galactic society came with significant military capability attached. Some species found this reassuring, others found it deeply concerning. Everyone agreed it was impossible to ignore. Neo approached Kathy after the official proceedings concluded, moving with the careful courtesy of a warrior who'd learned painful lessons about underestimating opponents. His bioarmor had been fully repaired, but he'd added a small mark to its surface, a scar he'd chosen to keep visible as a reminder. "Ambassador, I have been reassigned as Krell liaison to Earth's military forces. The Dominion believes I should develop deeper understanding of human combat philosophy so future cultural misunderstandings can be avoided." "That seems wise," Kathy said neutrally. "I'm sure Admiral Ashley will be delighted to host you. She does enjoy educational opportunities." "I am certain she does," Neo said with a tone suggesting he was considerably less delighted about the arrangement. "If I may ask, how did your species develop such sophisticated organizational thinking? Most civilizations progress from individual combat to small unit tactics over thousands of generations. You seem to have compressed that evolution dramatically." Kathy considered her response carefully. "Humans are social creatures by nature. We survived our evolutionary period by working together against predators stronger and faster than individual humans could ever be. That cooperation became ingrained in our thinking. When we developed weapons, we didn't just make them more powerful. We made them work together. Every advancement in human military technology has focused on better coordination, better communication, better integration of multiple systems toward common objectives. So when we asked for one warrior, you genuinely perceived your Navy as one entity." "Exactly. To human thinking, a carrier strike group is one cohesive unit the same way your bioarmor is one cohesive system made of multiple components. The fact that our components happen to be independent humans doesn't change the fundamental unity of purpose and coordination." Neo absorbed this, being his translator, working overtime to bridge conceptual gaps between species whose military philosophies had evolved along completely different paths. "The galaxy will need time to adjust to Earth's presence. Your approach to warfare challenges assumptions that have guided galactic military doctrine for millennia." "Change is uncomfortable," Kathy acknowledged, "but sometimes necessary. The Council's peacekeeping forces have been largely ceremonial because no single species wanted to commit the resources necessary for effective intervention. Earth can fill that gap, assuming other species can tolerate our methods." Trevor emerged from one of the carrier's transport shuttles, his uniform decorated with insignia that Neo's database identified as senior enlisted rank. The Master Chief carried himself with the relaxed confidence of someone who'd seen everything the universe could throw at him and remained unimpressed. He saluted Kathy with casual precision. "Ambassador, Admiral Ashley sends her regards and requests your presence for a strategic planning session. Apparently, several council members have already submitted peacekeeping requests, and the Admiral wants to establish proper protocols before we start taking assignments. Tell her I'll be there shortly." Kathy turned back to Neo. "You're welcome to attend if you'd like. Consider it part of your liaison education." "I would be honored," Neo said, and surprised himself by meaning it. The strategic planning session took place aboard the carrier, in a conference room that would have been unremarkable except for the holographic display showing real-time tactical data from across the solar system. Admiral Ashley stood at the head of the table, surrounded by officers whose combined experience represented decades of military service. Belle sat near the back, still wearing her flight suit, looking entirely too pleased with herself. "All right, let's establish some ground rules," Ashley began. "The Council wants Earth to provide peacekeeping services, which is fine, but we're not mercenaries, and we're not the Galactic Police Force. Any peacekeeping mission requires clear objectives, defined rules of engagement, and exit criteria. I will not commit Navy assets to open-ended conflicts with vague victory conditions." Kathy pulled up a list of pending requests. "The Vrintola dispute is highest priority. Both species have agreed to arbitration, but they need neutral forces to maintain separation during negotiations. Classic peacekeeping scenario. Acceptable." We'll position a destroyer group between their territories and enforce a demilitarized zone until arbitration concludes. Ashley made notes on her datapad. What else? The Kelvin Confederation is requesting assistance with piracy suppression in their outer colonies. Apparently, raiders have been hitting supply convoys, and the local defense forces can't maintain adequate patrol coverage. Also acceptable. We'll assign a submarine patrol group for anti-piracy operations. Silent running, long-range sensors, minimal visible presence. Show these pirates what happens when you mess with protected shipping lanes. Ashley looked up at her assembled officers. Anyone see problems with these initial missions? Belle raised her hand. Ma'am, do we have authorization to engage targets in self-defense, or are we purely observational? Defensive engagement is authorized under standard rules of engagement. If someone shoots at you, you may return fire with proportional response. If someone shoots at vessels you're protecting, you may neutralize the threat using minimum necessary force. If someone looks at you funny, you file a report and let diplomats handle it. Clear? Crystal, ma'am. Neo listened to the planning session with growing comprehension. The humans weren't discussing conquest or domination. Every conversation focused on clearly defined objectives, legal authority, and proportional response. This was professional military planning at a level of sophistication the Krell had never achieved. His species had always approached warfare as extension of individual combat, scaled up but fundamentally unchanged. Humans had completely reimagined military operations as coordinated problem-solving requiring multiple, specialized components working toward common goals. Your navy operates more like a living organism than a traditional military force, Neo observed during a pause in the planning. Each vessel has specialized function, but all share common awareness and respond to threats collectively. That's actually a good analogy, Trevor said. Navy's like a body. Carriers are the brain, destroyers are the immune system, submarines are the nervous system, and marines are the fists we use when diplomacy fails. And what are fighter pilots? Neo asked, glancing at Belle. We're the personality, Belle said with a grin. The part that makes everything more interesting. The planning session continued for hours, establishing protocols and procedures that would govern Earth's peacekeeping operations throughout galactic space. By the time Ashley dismissed her officers, the Navy had a clear mandate, defined limitations, and enough diplomatic authorization to operate effectively without overstepping bounds. It was military planning raised to an art form, and Neo found himself taking extensive notes despite his earlier skepticism. Kathy returned to Earth's diplomatic station as the carrier group began rotating shifts, maintaining constant presence while allowing individual vessels to resupply and crew to rest. The station's observation deck offered a perfect view of the fleet, its organized chaos somehow managing to look both threatening and reassuring depending on one's perspective. Seven found her there, the Krell diplomat having finally recovered from his earlier distress. He carried a datapad loaded with documentation that represented the tribunal's formal acknowledgement of Earth's unique military structure. The Council has updated its combat regulations to include organizational definitions of warrior status, Seven said, his tone carrying weary resignation. There are now 37 new legal categories addressing various interpretations of individual versus collective combat entities. It took our best legal scholars weeks to draft these revisions, and we're still not certain we've covered all possible loopholes. Humans are creative problem solvers, Kathy said. It's one of our better qualities, and occasionally one of our more frustrating ones, depending on which side of the problem you're standing on. Indeed. Seven hesitated, then continued with obvious reluctance. Ambassador, I must confess that I initially opposed your species' admission to the Council. I believed your military philosophy represented dangerous instability in galactic order. I was mistaken. The manner in which your admiral handled the Vrintola incident demonstrated that your species understands the difference between having power and using power. That distinction is rare among younger civilizations. We've learned that lesson through painful experience. Earth's history includes enough wars to teach us the cost of military force deployed without wisdom. The Navy exists, not because we love violence, but because we understand that sometimes the credible threat of violence prevents actual bloodshed. A sophisticated philosophy, Seven acknowledged. One the galaxy needs, perhaps, even if it makes us uncomfortable. He departed, leaving Kathy alone with her thoughts and the view of humanity's newest presence in galactic space. The carrier rotated slowly in orbit, its flight deck quiet now but ready to explode into action at moment's notice. Destroyers maintained patrol patterns that would have been invisible to casual observation, but created perfect defensive coverage for any approach vector. Submarines drifted through the darkness like patient predators, their sensors painting a complete tactical picture of everything within range. Bell's fighter launched for a routine patrol, its exhaust trail drawing a bright line across the starfield before the craft disappeared into the darkness. Somewhere aboard the carrier, Trevor was probably explaining combined arms doctrine to a group of confused alien observers who'd come to study human military methodology. Admiral Ashley would be reviewing deployment schedules, mission assignments, and the 1,000 small details that kept a strike group operating at peak efficiency. The galaxy had asked Earth for its strongest warrior. Humanity had responded with 340,000 people who worked together so seamlessly that calling them one warrior wasn't even a stretch of definition. It was simple truth, from a certain perspective, the perspective that had allowed humans to survive, thrive, and eventually reach for the stars while maintaining the organizational bonds that made survival possible in the first place. Neo stood on his species' flagship, watching the human vessels through instruments that still struggled to fully comprehend the operational sophistication on display. He'd begun writing his memoir, a document he'd tentatively titled Understanding Human Warfare, a Krell. Perspective. The manuscript's first chapter opened with a simple thesis that his superiors found either profound or deeply disturbing depending on their mood. Humans didn't send the Navy because it was their strongest warrior. They sent the Navy because to humans, that's what warriors looked like. Individuals working in perfect harmony toward common goals, each person a critical component of something far greater than themselves. That collective strength, that instinctive coordination, that fundamental unwillingness to face challenges alone, that was humanity's true power. The Krell had challenged Earth to send one warrior. Earth had responded by sending an entire philosophy of warfare that the galaxy didn't have proper vocabulary to describe. Somewhere in that gap between intention and interpretation, between what the challenge asked for and what humanity provided, the future of galactic civilization had shifted in ways no one fully understood yet. But everyone agreed on one thing: nobody was going to challenge Earth to single combat again, at least not without very carefully defining their terms first. And probably not even then, because humans had demonstrated a remarkable talent for finding creative interpretations that technically followed the rules while completely subverting their intended meaning. The Navy remained on station, ready to keep the peace through the simple expedient of being too powerful to ignore and too professional to abuse that power. It was peacekeeping through overwhelming capability combined with restraint, and it was working far better than traditional galactic enforcement methods ever had. Earth had joined galactic civilization on its own terms, bringing military philosophy that challenged ancient assumptions about warfare, honor, and what it meant to be strong. The galaxy would adapt to humanity's presence, or it would learn why challenging the Navy was considered an educational experience best avoided. Either way, when future species joined the Galactic Council and faced the trial of supremacy, they would do so knowing that the definition of warrior had been permanently expanded to include any organizational structure that could project coordinated force. That was Earth's legacy, written in revised combat law and enforced by warships that answered to a species who'd never quite understood the concept of fighting alone. The carrier's lights dimmed as ship's night began, but the Navy never truly slept. Someone was always watching. Someone was always ready. Someone was always prepared to respond if civilization needed defending. And that someone was 340,000 humans who'd proven that the strongest warrior was the one who refused to face challenges alone. This was just one story. Subscribe now so you don't miss what's coming next.